The Open Highway podcast is a production of Viking Dog Entertainment, and now you can visit the all-new Viking Dog store for access to everything that Viking Dog has to offer. Movies, books, and apparel, including motivational lines, open highway merchandise, and exclusive wolf designs that raise money for wolf rescue organizations. So visit thevikingdogstore.com today.
I'm Dr. Asif Doja.
And I'm Dr. Ali Hassan.
He is not a doctor. In fact, he is a stand-up comedian.
Way to ruin it.
In our new podcast, Doctor versus Comedian, in each episode, I'll pick a topic from comedy and entertainment, and I'll question Ali about that.
And then I'll pick a topic from health and wellness and question Asif about that. For example, I might ask, is laughter the best medicine?
To which I might answer, for actual COVID-19, no. For the COVID blues that 7 billion people have been feeling lately, quite possibly.
I'll supply the anecdotes.
And I'll supply the evidence. And our goal is to be informative and entertaining. We'll be talking about serious topics in an unserious way.
Upcoming topics include comedy, COVID, clowns, cannabis, and other things that don't start with C.
So please subscribe to Doctor versus Comedian wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes releasing every Friday. Or is it dropping? What do people say these days?
And scene.
Yeah, I was really interested because you have this varied background, obviously the military, but one thing that jumped out at me, because we just dealt with the first round of elections last night, and you ran for state office.
Yeah.
What got you into that? Like what draws you into wanting to put your butt on the line like that and really
I haven't quite figured that out about myself. I think it's somewhat wanting to help and get your ideas out there, and honestly thinking that, I had some good ideas, but then there's also a deeper level of narcissism, I think, that is kind of at play. Not to say
that idea that nobody that we want in office actually wants to run for office. Is that the...
Yeah, I've kind of struggled with that. Like I like the ideas. I like pushing certain policies. I want, the world to be a certain way. But at the same time, I don't like the process of running for office. I never enjoyed that part of it. But yeah, to answer your question about what originally caused me to do that, I think it was just wanting to fix things. I think I'm a solutions-oriented person. I think I've got a reasonably good educational background, a pretty good level of experience. And then I think you might see this as well, that as you get older, you start seeing that the people who are in charge are really no smarter than you are. And so it's like, why is the world going in that direction and not the direction that maybe I wanted to go into? So I think that was probably the original reason. I was not successful in my run. Part of it was just political realities. I mean, I ran as a Republican in a pretty deeply Democratic district in Tucson, Arizona. But I learned a lot from the process, met a lot of good people, and even people on the Democratic side, made good friends with them. And so overall, I'd say it was a good experience.
What you said broken, like what are some of the things that you would point out are broken? We're trying to fix things, you said. So
I think that we put too much stock in political leadership to solve our problems. I do believe that certain things in society are broken or so I agree. I think I have sort of the heart of a progressive, but the mind of a conservative, if that's the way to maybe encapsulate it.
I don't think you're alone in that. I think there are a lot of people. I would have to say that, I said this to someone the other day, is they're like, oh, well, you're a liberal. And I'm like, with the way progressive is going, like what I used to think was the left and progressive is now almost more centrist, I think.
Yeah.
We are definitely, the left has gone very extreme, especially here in California. And you're in California too.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm in Los Angeles. Yeah. Yeah. I think we're getting to the point where I like the ideas of treating people with respect, that everybody should get a chance to compete, But I do disagree with just the redefinition of words. You know, when you can't just communicate, when you don't agree on what, well, you know, like certain basic facts, like, you know, biological facts about, gender or sex or things like that. I totally agree with, like, people should be, again, treated with respect, but you can't just misdefine words. Other little basic things about history, um, the fact that the country was founded in 1776, not 1619. Some of the things that were coming out of the left in the last couple of years, I think, have been pretty distasteful to me. But I do agree with the sentiment that people should be treated fairly, that we should not be judging people on the basis of their race, that, women should be allowed to compete and be treated with respect no matter what profession they pursue. They shouldn't be pressured to be mothers. Like, all these things I agree with on the progressive left, but maybe not in the policy realm. I think maybe where I would disagree with people on the left is I think we put too much power in the government when it comes to education. I prefer more private education. We can go down a whole litany of things, but I think the best way to put it is that, again, the heart of a liberal, but maybe the mind of the conservative.
Yeah, that sounds like a libertarian.
Yeah, I do, and I would say I'm mostly libertarian in a lot of things, but I was more of a hardcore libertarian about 10 years ago, and then I've always been the type of person who challenges what he believes. So if I have a certain thought in my mind, my first instinct is not to go out and find evidence to support it. It's to find evidence that challenges it.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout that process, I kind of get yanked to the middle. So I can go off into maybe, out of the lane a little bit, but then I kind of get yanked back to the middle a little bit. And I think maybe 10 years ago, I was getting pretty hardcore libertarianism to where I didn't think that government was necessary at all. And then, and then I found myself following some people, some hardcore libertarians who hadn't changed any of their positions in like 8 years, 10 years. They were spouting the same tropes. And I'm like, this person hasn't grown. And I think maybe that I was like, well, that can't be the answer. So then I go exploring, okay, there's a little bit more to it than just, you just get rid of the government.
It's interesting. It's interesting you say that, because I just did an interview with Andy Norman, who Andy Norman's the author of Mental Immunity. And we had a really, really deep conversation about what you just talked about introducing new ideas, testing them, and then figuring out whether or not it's going to change how you feel or how you look at the world. And I agree with you what you're saying. I think there's a lot of people who hold on to their ideals just because they're not willing to test them, or they say, well, that's who I am. Don't challenge what it is that I believe. I'm a Republican and this is what we believe, and I'm not going to change it. I'm a Democrat, I'm a centrist, whatever. And too often we don't allow ourselves to bring in new information. And the example I gave to him is, well, I'm not the same person I am when I was 6 years old. I just don't still believe in Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy. I've grown up, or else I'd be institutionalized if I still believed all those things. And it seems like we don't allow people to evolve politically sometimes.
Yeah, well, I think that's true. I think you have to ask yourself, when you are forming your positions or your beliefs, what is your goal? Is your goal the truth, or is your goal to protect your tribe or your friends? And I think you've probably had this as well, where I'm sure if you're a type of guy who's got a podcast and you like talking about ideas, and you've probably had more than your share of online arguments with people on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. And, I find that a lot of the people that I debated were not really interested in the truth. They were interested in protecting their friends, which is a laudable goal. I mean, I'm not saying that you're a bad person for wanting to protect your friends or your family or your identity, but you need to recognize when you're going down that path and when that's becoming when it's becoming harmful. I find that a lot of people who feel really strongly about a certain issue, it's really, there's something in the background that they are a person or a group of people that they're protecting.
Tribalism.
Yeah, and it could be your parents. If you had a family member who was gay or a certain race, and they got treated unfairly as a child, and you find other people who are sort of attacking those ideas, your initial instinct is to lash out, even if you know you're wrong. Like we tend to value loyalty over truth in a lot of respects. So again, I don't think it's a bad thing to protect people, but you just have to recognize that there's a cost to that.
I wonder if we've almost forgotten how to have those types of discussions. Yeah. Now there's the anonymity of hiding behind a keyboard. There is as well as like, we just don't talk to people in situations and be like, oh, well, how do you feel about this? Let's have a civil discussion about it. It's there is the hiding behind the keyboard, and there's also the fact that when you're arguing online, it's more of a public debate. It's not, obviously me and you are talking right now in a sort of a semi-public forum, and that other people are going to be listening to it. But when you're face to face with somebody, you can make mistakes. You can clarify. If you say something stupid, the whole world's not going to know about it. So you have a much more honest conversation. Whereas online, you might have 10,000 people watching you debate this person, and 5,000 of them are hoping that one side wins, the other 5,000 are hoping the other side wins. So it's just, there's no room for error. It's become a blood sport. It really has. Yeah. Yes. So I think the best way to have the conversation is to in your mind say, I'm pursuing the truth. I'm not going to protect my tribe, and I have my tribal allegiances as well. Being in the military, my instinct is to want to protect my guys or whatever. Again, I'm a registered Republican. I am now, I have to say that. And maybe my instinct is to protect every Republican, but I have to fight that instinct and say, no, my first allegiance is to the truth. So make a commitment to the truth. And then I think for the other person, maybe give them some grace and say, look, I recognize that it's a good thing that you're fighting to protect the people that you're trying to protect. Like, I agree, like those people need to be protected, and throw that out there, like help the person. Like as a Republican, I might get in debates about whatever it is, transgenderism or some sort of, I don't know, what's another one? A rich versus poor argument. Like I agree, like there are certain people who need to be protected and we should have empathy for them. Well, here's one, because we both live in California. I'd be really interested to hear your side of it. So here in California, and it seems trivial, but for some reason it just sticks out to me, is recently they just made a law that now in a store, you are not allowed to pick, you're not allowed to set aside in toy stores certain aisles based upon gender. You can't have a boys aisle, you can't have a girls aisle, you can't have a pink aisle, you can't have a blue aisle. So it's now a law. And personally, I have feelings on that. Is that a law in California? It's a law now. It's an actual law. Toys R Us, or I don't even know if Toys R Us is still around, but you can't actually delineate. And I think I would have to go look, and I don't want to go out on a limb on this. I think it has to do with the size of the store. I'm not sure it's every single store, but it definitely, certain stores aren't allowed to do that. Personally, and this is coming from a guy who, like I said, left of center, I think it's overreach. I think that's a societal thing. I think you use your dollars in order to choose what stores you go, and as a society we move forward, and I use this example of smoking. As a society, yes, the government started to put in laws, but as a society, we started to say, we're not comfortable with that. We don't want smoking. We know it's bad for us, and we evolved. Mm-hmm. I don't think the state of California should have stepped in and said, we're going to regulate this. So I agree with you 100%. Again, if the intent is to not influence children to make certain decisions, to make girls feel comfortable to buy a truck if they want, or if a boy feels inclined to buy a doll, if that's something that he really wants to do. Okay. I mean, again, we shouldn't be allowing children to make all decisions in their lives. I mean, children are not very developed and not very smart and can hurt themselves very easily. So we should control certain decisions. But I agree with the intent that we should not be cramming down on children the choices that they make about things like that. That might be a laudable societal goal.
That said, why not just have the customers and the businesses decide what they want to do? I think that's sort of a problem that I have with the left, and is that, when we use government, we're using force. It may not be force right away. Maybe the cop isn't going to show up and hold a gun to your head right away, but eventually that's what a law is. It's an idea that's backed up by force. And a government is a group of people that are authorized to use force. And so that's how I tend to look at things, is in terms of force and consent. It might be a good goal, but would I use force to do it? If not, then I wouldn't make it a law. So I agree. Now, looking back on the smoking thing, again, I loved it when they banned smoking in bars, because I wasn't a smoker. And, my clothes, smelled fine on Saturday morning for the first time in ever. It was great. But yeah, now looking back, I'm like, if you don't want to go to a smoky bar, then don't go. I'm most of my positions are, if I don't want to be around someone, then don't be around them. But
that was kind of like I said, that was society as a whole. We moved forward. We got the information. We knew that it was bad for us. We didn't want to smell like smoke. So locally, we started implementing laws, and it started to grow because society moved forward.
Right.
And we had known for a while that it was bad. So here in California, we have we're in LA starting. Well, by the time this airs, it will have happened, but it starts at the end of the week, is vaccine mandates across the county. I can't even go to the gym without showing how are you feeling about that?
Vaccine mandates are another touchy one. Again, if it's something that has a high externality where your normal behavior is going to hurt somebody who's not involved in your transaction, that's a place for the government to step in. As far as vaccine mandates, this is what I would do. I would say I would not require businesses to do it. But if a business wants to require it for them, then they should be allowed. And most businesses probably would require it. I mean, mine does. I'm an airline pilot. They're requiring us to get a vaccine. They found good ways to do it. Initially, they offered us money to do it, and most of us took the money. But at the end of the day, there were probably a couple of hundred people out of 15,000 that did not want to get the vaccine. So, it's a touchy one. My default is government is to stay out of it.
But for you, for the airline, that's not a public health issue. That's more of protecting their workforce, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, that's why I think it makes sense for an airline. I work for United Airlines, and again, I'm not speaking for them. There's 13,000 pilots who could have a different opinion. I think it made sense for us because we have to travel across borders. And when you're bringing people across borders, then, there are certain vaccine requirements. So I think for us, it made sense because pilots were, dropping trips, and then it's like, well, if you drop the trip because you don't have a vaccine, do you get paid for that trip? So there was a whole host of problems that came with that. But now if I worked for, some tech company that just has one small building in LA, would I require it if I was that business? Probably not.
Yeah.
But I might say, hey, look, if you come in to the office, maybe you got to wear a mask. I mean, there's all sorts of policies. I just say, I don't know how to run your life. You do it as you see fit. But yeah, I mean, vaccines are tough. If you're going to have a big public school that's run by the local government, then by definition, the government has to make certain decisions as to who they're going to allow to work there. I mean, go ahead.
So I was just going to say, so I would think, because what I'm starting to put together, you're more of a local government making decisions for the local versus even a state level or feds.
Yeah. I had a friend put it really nicely. He said that for a local government, you'd probably elect a Democrat. For a state government, probably a Republican. And for the federal government, probably a Libertarian. In other words, the farther away the entity is from you, the less authority it should have over you. And you could even take that down to like the family level or even the personal level, like with my own body. I mean, my God, I'm like a fascist, I mean, I'm really hard on myself. What goes in my body is I'm paying attention with my family as well. I mean, maybe not a fascist, but maybe I'm a socialist with my family. We all share, We do have probably more rules than would be comfortable in certain other families. I don't know, but somebody who's very far away, like the federal government, I want very few things. I want, protect the borders. If we're going to go to war, it needs to be something really important. We all need to decide. But when it comes to local health and safety standards, the city should decide that, or the county, or somebody like that.
What about, so you're former military, you're an A-10, you were an A-10 pilot, the Warthog, right?
Yeah.
I did my research.
Thanks.
So I want to segue a little bit. So there's been a lot of pushback. I did a show on the police pushback with vaccine mandates, and there's also been a pushback in the military. And I was always kind of under the assumption that, you walked in, you got, your 50 jabs in the arm and it's protecting you. Do you have any insight, like why there is that pushback from the military? As of even recently, they've still got thousands and thousands of soldiers who won't allow themselves to be vaccinated. Is there a mindset issue? Is it a political issue? What do you think?
I think it's political. Yeah. I've got the couple of friends, again, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I have a few friends that are pushing back really hard on this. And I think it's more just a political ideology. That's one I don't really understand. When you're in the military, we have, I don't know, maybe 12 other vaccine mandates that we have to adhere to. If you're in the military, if your superior officer tells you to pick up a piece of trash on the ground, it's technically a lawful order. You got to do it. There's so many other orders that we have to comply with. I don't see why this one is much different. So I think they're pushing back mainly for political reasons. If there are health reasons, you can get exceptions. Like I think maybe that's the problem, is people don't understand that there are accommodations that we can make, and we should. But yeah, the military one, I don't quite get. I mean, I had to take anthrax shots when I was in Korea, and those were painful. And I would say the guys who were protesting the COVID vaccine now were not protesting the anthrax vaccine 10, 15 years ago. Yeah. So I think the difference is now it's just a lot more political. So I'm not on the side of fighting the vaccine mandate in the military. I wouldn't want a vaccine mandate for the general public, but for the military, again, you got to go across borders. You're in tight quarters with a lot of people. And sadly, well, I'm not going to say sadly, but the truth is, when you're in the military, you don't own your freedom to the level that you would as a private citizen.
Yeah. So, especially when it comes to medical and
yeah. And again, I say mandate in quotes. I think that every mandate should have some sort of accommodation policy, or if somebody has a legitimate health reason, whether it's pregnancy or something else, then they should be able to, be able to get out of that mandate somehow. But from what I understand, this vaccine has been pretty well researched. We've had, I don't know how many people on earth have had it by now, and we're pretty darn sure that it's not 100% effective, but it's much better than COVID.
Right. So, and you have your podcast, you interview a lot of military people, right? Like it's yeah. You want to plug the name of the podcast? Because I don't think anyone would ever guess what it's called.
Yeah, well, it's just the Greg Krino Show. So it's just I know. And I struggle with that name a little bit because it is a show about experts. So I interview experts and people with unique experiences. So it's not a show about me. But it focuses a lot on military. I was a fighter pilot, so I know a lot of fighter pilots and interview them. I've had an astronaut, I've had a Holocaust survivor. So it's sort of like a Joe Rogan, but more military and aviation oriented. So,
no UFOs and no
although
Elon Musk getting stoned on your show.
No. Although I did interview a guy who worked at Area 51.
Oh, really?
In the 1960s. Yeah. TD Barnes. He was part of the A-12 and the SR-71 project, and was there when supposedly the government was hiding aliens and
Bob Lazar and all that stuff. And
yeah, I mean, he was just saying, look, whenever the public came up with the whole alien thing, we didn't fight it because it was great cover. It was, so I think that's the big reason why the government's always kind of teasing. They're okay with the whole alien thing, because now it's like, well, they don't want to know, or the public, it kind of keeps the public from knowing about all these radar tests and all these spying missions that they're actually going on, against the North Koreans and the Russians and the Chinese and all that.
There's so much going there. Yeah. There's so much going on with that.
Yeah.
I got to go out there once. I actually saw I didn't get to go out to the actual base, but I did go out to the mailbox and the cameras and the white Broncos and everything back in the 90s when we were all like X-filing out,
No way. So you went out there. Were there people out there with like guns telling you, hey, stay away? And
no, there were cameras in the bushes, and we went up to the sign that says "Do not photograph the sign," and took photographs of the sign. And there was a white Bronco that was up on the ridge, but we didn't stick around very long. We said, okay, we got it. We're out of here. I don't want to get arrested. I've heard stories. So it was, we were in our 20s and we were stupid and just,
that's pretty great though.
The early days of the internet and everything.
No, that's awesome. I've actually flown. So as an A-10 pilot, or as anybody in the Air Force knows, we have a lot of exercises that go on around Area 51. So that there's like 100 miles of airspace or maybe more that surround Area 51. And it's sort of, Area 51 is like the donut in the middle that nobody can fly into except for, very specialized people. But that whole area around it is all military airspace. So I've flown in that, and you can peer into the airspace and see the base. So it's there.
It's the worst kept secret in the world.
It is. I mean, it is. It's
no. Where did you grow up? Before you got into the military, where did you grow up? In California?
Here. Yeah. Long Beach, California.
Okay. So, and then where did you train? Where did you do your training?
So I went to the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs for college. And then after that, I was stationed everywhere. I did some training in Texas and Mississippi. And then my first assignment was in Korea. Did that for a year and then came back stateside. I was in Arizona for most of my time. And then during that, I was in Arizona for like 12, 13 years. And then during that time, I spent a few deployments out to the Middle East. So I did 4 deployments out there. But that was it. So I've pretty much been in the Southwest almost my whole career.
All right. So I spent some time in Korea. So I'm curious, like that was your first overseas experience?
Yeah.
What did you think? Like what?
I liked it. No, I mean, I was there in 2000 and it was definitely a second world country, if that's really a term you can use. It was growing rapidly, lots of pollution in the urban areas. But then you drive out into the rural areas and it was like, the road would just end. You'd drive 50 miles an hour down the road and then all of a sudden it would just end, no sign, no nothing. So back then it was a little bit of a culture shock in certain areas. But I was always surrounded by my military buddies. So I wasn't really immersed in Korean culture. Now I went back 19 years later. So a couple summers ago, I did 2 weeks there and it had advanced rapidly. I mean, you could really, I think South Korea is definitely just a wonderful example of, what a market-based, freedom-oriented country would look like. I mean, even the Koreans themselves were noticeably bigger. Like in 2000, when I was there, most Koreans were pretty small. But in 2019, like they were like as big as Americans. Like I just felt like the average person was just bigger and stronger and just better at everything was just better.
They have a definite approach difference to life though than we do. I mean, I was a teacher there for a summer. So I didn't spend as much time as you did. And I was there in 07, I believe it was. I'd have to go back and look. So it was a little bit after you were there. But there's this approach where, I mean, my God, they go to school 6 days a week. They go to school from 7 in the morning till 7 at night, sometimes even more. So there's this dedication that you don't see that in the United States. I mean, I imagine your kids tell them that they had to go to school 6 days a week, 12, 14 hours a day. They'd run away and join the circus. it wouldn't happen. So you can understand why they're able to push that economy and push those things so quickly forward and so successfully.
Well, there's sort of two aspects to that. And I'd like to hear your opinion on it as well as having been there. But I noticed in the military, they have a certain level of urgency that we don't have in the United States. Like,
oh yeah,
their existence depends on their job in a very immediate way. Like, if they don't do it well, they are afraid of being overrun by the North Koreans like that. And Seoul is only, I don't know, 20 miles from the border.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a certain urgency that we don't have in the United States, and we don't have to have because we're surrounded by oceans and Canada. Like we just don't have the same threats that they do. And then secondly, I've heard this, so I'm not going to say that I'm 100% correct, but Koreans in general have a little bit of a, this is going to sound kind of bad, but I'm going to say it because we have a friendly audience, but they have a little bit of an inferiority complex, like they're trying to make up for something. Like the Japanese were always kind of considered the top dog in the East Asia. Maybe China is like a close second, and the Koreans were always sort of like looked down upon, and they don't like that. And they have always wanted to really assert themselves. And I found that when we would go out to bars, for example, they really wanted to challenge us to like drinking contests. And they wanted to, they really wanted to show you how good and strong and capable they were. So there's like a certain just sense of urgency that is in the Korean culture that, I think maybe in America, we kind of get a little lazy.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know if I call it inferiority, but there's definitely, I think it does come from the Japanese, so I don't know if you saw it when I was there. I was there during what they have another term for it, but I'll call it basically Remembrance Day.
mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you were there for that, but what it is it's a remembrance of what the Japanese did to them. And basically for 24 hours, all of the television stations run footage from the war, torture footage, like stuff that people, let alone children, I don't even think need to see. Torture, bodies, war crimes, to remember and let everybody know this is what happened to us. So it's definitely ingrained to them. I also kind of feel like, and again, I'm curious what you saw.
Mm-hmm.
When I was there, it's a mixed culture. And when I say that, I mean, they're trying to find their identity because you have several issues. Obviously, they're in a state of war, and you have half the country, that is separated. And the South Koreans are like, they are our brothers. We want to sisters. They want to reunite the country. And I got to reiterate, like you said, they are in a state of war. They have a mandatory service. Every kid has to serve at like 17, 18. They can put it off for college. They have to come back. I remember seeing these boys going to training, and I'm like, they looked like they should be out playing on a jungle gym, not going to war. And they also, because of the way the war happened and our influence there's definitely an American influence. There were billboards when I was there. I don't know if they were there yet when you were there, for cosmetic surgery. And it was get your eyes rounded.
I've heard
and
that.
It was really strange. And there's a huge Baptist and other Christian influence in the country from all the time that we spent there. So there's a lot of that. So in some ways, I think it's a country that is trying to refine its culture. And I think that's like what you were saying is, they do like to drink. Oh my God, they like to drink. They definitely.
Yeah. I think that's a better way to put it. Yeah, I don't like to say it's like an inferiority. It's definitely they just want to assert themselves, and they have been crapped on by the Japanese for a long time, and then probably by the Chinese as well. And I think but they're rapidly becoming the force in that region. And and they still don't 100% get along with the Japanese either. Like, they're both Western allies in a sense.
It's a generational thing. When I was there was a group of kids who went to it was like their version of Comic-Con.
Okay.
and they dressed up like Japanese characters. And the older generation flipped out. How dare you do this? How dare you pay any respect to their culture? Da 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 da. And the younger kids were like, we love anime, we love manga, we love manga,
Yeah.
so they didn't understand. And it came to that whole thing about the Remembrance Day. They're like, you need to remember what they did to us. We will never forgive them. We can't, how do you move forward as a culture when you can't put it into the right context and start to, we don't still Germany, we don't still bring up, well, some people do every time they meet a German person, but you have to move forward and realize it's generational.
Well, I think the biggest principle is you blame the person who actually did it. That's the thing. You don't punish their kids or their grandkids, and if a person does something wrong, then you blame that person. That's really the key. And we like to use broad generalizations and group people because it's convenient, and it's just sort of a shorthand way of doing things. But yeah, you can get into trouble and never move forward, like you just said. And it's funny you mention that, because when I was going through pilot training in the Air Force, we had Japanese students that were training with us. So we would have other countries would send their students to us, and we would train them. And we had a couple of Japanese students. And I remember a couple of my fellow American trainees had grandfathers that were attending our pilot training graduation, and were really uncomfortable that we had Japanese students there with us. And we didn't think anything of it. I'm like, I was born in 1975, and these guys are my friends. But there were a few guys who had fought in the Pacific Theater, and anything Japanese was still bad. And I don't spend a whole lot of time fighting against that. I guess if it was in my own family, I would a little bit, but we just kind of realized that eventually they're going to be gone. They had a valid experience, and their pain is real. So I think we should recognize it, but at the same time, you're right. Like, you got to know when to not perpetuate that hatred. And so
everybody's had a war with everybody at one point or another.
Yeah. I mean, how far back do you want to go? I mean, do we hate the English and the French? I mean, come on. So
yeah. So when you put together, so you did a radio show in Arizona for a while. Did you bring that experience to your podcast, or how did that happen?
Yeah, a little bit. I didn't bring much of it to the podcast, to be honest with you. Back then, I was a little more politically charged than I am now. Now it's more about, I think, learning and having fun conversations and being a little bit more positive. But yeah, I did the radio show for a couple of years. It was pretty fun. This is back in 2011. So I just lost my election. 2011, I got the opportunity to go on the radio, and I filled in for a talk show host in Tucson who's a pretty firebrand conservative guy. Like, his audience is, they're probably your Trump supporters nowadays. But back then, 2011 is a little bit different. So I filled in for him, and I had on some great guests. And I was like, well, if I'm going to have this one shot to, reach whatever it is, 10 or 20,000 people, I want to have some great guests, so people will want to, listen to me if I ever come back on and substitute host again. And so I had on Adam Carolla. I had on, this is all in one show. I had a friend who was like, she was a great gal, and she would email everybody and try to get anybody on. And she was able to get me Adam Carolla. I had Peter Schiff, and I had Steve Forbes all on in 1 hour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
Adam was doing, that was like when he was doing his podcast, wasn't it? When he was first starting out with his, he was one of the OGs, like back in the day when.
Yeah, he was one of the originals. And I remember him talking about podcasting. I was like, what is this? That's for amateur. I let him go with it, because I was like, well, you're just on the internet, like, talking to yourself. And it turns out I was the idiot. Like,
yeah, if you'd known then.
I know. I'm like, man, I should have gotten into podcasting back in 2011.
I didn't realize, I heard an interview with Adam Curry recently, and I didn't realize how instrumental he was in the whole podcasting world. I learned a lot from him, and I'm like, he's just a VJ from MTV. I didn't realize he actually
Okay.
helped create the tech. Like he was very instrumental in all of that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Was that while he was he doing that through MTV, or how?
No, this was in the early 2000s. Like he literally was one of the first people. There's a Joe Rogan. He goes on Joe Rogan all the time, and he does this amazing interview. He's he's become very interested in what goes on behind the curtain in politics and, dare I say, conspiracy theories and things, but he backs it up, man. He's he likes to do his research, and whether or not you believe the facts he brings to the table is one thing, but man, he comes loaded for bear. He's like, here's everything I learned,
Is he, how conspiracy theory are we talking? Like what
I'd heard
the moon
is
landing, or is it more like,
it's more like the truth behind the monetary system, who's really controlling Bitcoin, who backs stuff, what's the political grabs, that kind of stuff. That's his, what's the real reason behind mandates? What's the real reason behind, Trump or Biden? And that's kind of his thing. Not so much moon landing stuff, as far as I know.
Yeah, well, that's what's funny about the conspiracy theories, is there is a spectrum to them. And I think that's what I try to do, is dig down a little bit deeper than just this person's vax or anti-vax, or this person is conspiracy theory or not, and kind of like see, okay, what are we actually talking about? Moon landing, I'm not on board with.
So what do you think then? I'm curious. I'm curious then. What do you think then about like the landscape that we have now with social media, the algorithms, Facebook and everything, the way that certain ideas can get out there, certain ones, the one I always use, if you listen to the show, is I always use the example of the Wuhan lab. Because at one point now it's seen as a viable theory. It's more likely than not that that's where COVID came from, or it was least associated with it. But 6 months, a year ago, if you floated that idea on YouTube, your video got wiped. And we can get into tribalism and where it comes from that. But there's definitely some stuff going down when it comes to having those open discussions about some of that stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that when something is new, you need to allow people to speak, first of all. I think just shutting down an opinion because you disagree with it is really dangerous, especially when things are new. So like during the pandemic, when we really didn't know much about this, that's like the last time you want to be, shutting down ideas and controlling the conversation. As far as the Wuhan lab thing, I wasn't really following this stuff very closely. I'm more of the idea, what you can attribute to ignorance, do that before you attribute it to malice. I think ignorance is far more common than malice.
Yeah.
So I could see it being that maybe they were experimenting with something and it leaked and somebody had an accident, maybe just didn't want to admit it because they didn't want to lose their job. I think that's probably a pretty plausible idea. As far as like, did it come from an animal? I guess that's plausible too. I'm the first to admit that I'm just ignorant on a lot of this stuff.
But the idea
reasonable.
But the idea of like the tribalism of it. So you're, if somebody had to look at you and I and say, okay, well, Eric's closer to the left and you're a little bit closer to the right, thereby, if you looked at me and said, well, I believe this, well, I'm supposed to say that's impossible, not because of I don't believe what you're saying, it's because it's coming from somebody on the other side. And there was that whole argument, like I was not a Trump supporter. I can't stand the guy. That's a whole other show.
Sure.
But the fact that if he floated an idea, I will say majority of them were out like loony. But if he floated an idea and somebody said, well, I actually find that idea interesting, but I'm not allowed to even entertain it because of the source. Yeah. That's dangerous, because then we're retreating, and we talked about that at the beginning of the show.
Well, of course. I mean, I read a great quote somewhere that, Hitler liked dogs and he brushed his teeth. Does that mean dogs are bad and brushing your teeth is bad? It's ridiculous. So I think we should stop looking at each other like left or right or libertarian or green or whatever. Like, don't make that can always be like a background of who you are. That's okay. But the number one priority should just be the truth. So I think if you just start there, say, I'm in the truth party first. Hey, look, Eric is too. We're both in the truth party. Great. We have something in common. Then we can move forward. Oh yeah, by the way, maybe Eric votes Democrat more often than I would, and I would vote Republican more often than he would. But it's just pretty far down the spectrum. Like, at least start there, and then you can find a lot more common ground than you would think.
Yeah.
And solve a lot more problems too. I mean, I think I'm starting to see more of like an angry middle arising, which is making me happy. There's a lot more people like you, rising up in the podcast realm and the talk show realm, and people are just kind of sick of the tribalism. They're just tired of it.
That makes me curious. Where do you go for your news or for your opinions and your commentary? Like, what sources speak to you?
So I try to look at ones from each of the different major ideologies. I don't have time to go through every corner of the internet, so I kind of pick the big ones. If I want a more liberal perspective, I'll go to the New York Times. Usually I get their morning update and their weekend update on my email every day. If I want a more conservative opinion, I'll look at the big one, just Fox News, because it's just easy. If I want libertarian, I'll go to Reason Magazine. I'll admit I like listening to Ben Shapiro because he's sort of the smartest conservative voice that I can think of. I pursue ideologies, but I pursue the smartest version of those ideologies that I can. And I try to distribute them as much as possible. That said, I like if I just want my Xanax and to feel good and to hear my opinions just parroted back to me, I'll do that once in a while. Like I said, I probably listen to Ben Shapiro more than I do everybody else. But I try to realize, like, look, this is not the only point of view. And I've even caught, a few stories that I've gotten from the Daily Wire. I'm like, well, oh, that's not correct. Let me see if that's actually correct. And I'll go to the New York Times, or I'll go to CNN or whatever. And I'm like, okay, there's a piece that I'm missing. And then, so that's kind of how I do it. It's like, I pursue ideologies, but I try to find the smartest version of them, and then just make sure that I'm kind of balancing what my diet, you don't want to eat all carbs.
Right. It's, what's the old saying? Trust but verify. It's kind
of yeah. And then a lot of times I don't even look at a news source. I'll go straight to the actual studies. So if I want to look at crime data, I'll go right to the FBI crime reports. I'll go right to LA County crime reports. Like, there's no reason to always have to go through a news source.
That's the military in you right there. That's going right to the bare facts.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's funny if you ever go to any article, click on any article, and then actually click on the sources and just see where they go. And you'll find a surprising number of them that like source themselves as fact.
I heard something really I was watching the election results last night, and for some reason I've tried to limit myself when it comes to mainstream news to just kind of like the evening news. I think because of my age, I still like, the summary at the end of the night where they give you a half hour of everything. And usually it's not too tinged, but at least you can figure out, what's fluff and what's not. And I turned on, I usually watch CBS, and then sometimes I'll watch NBC. I'll watch theirs. And last night I turned on NBC, and they had on the election results. And so I had it on the background, and I was just like, okay, whatever, I'm going to turn this off in a few minutes. And Chuck Todd comes on, and he's like, download the NBC app. And I'm like, all right, well, that's good that they're pitching that. And delete every other news app that you have. And I'm like, he did not just say that. And he was joking, but I'm like, still, like, really, that's not a good approach. And I'm hoping that some editor, some producer in the background, like, said, nah, let's not say that again. I'm hoping it is NBC. But so when it comes to your podcast, like, your podcast is much more like this. It's much more conversational based. It's much more about the stories that people bring to the table.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's really a less political podcast. I was discussing with my wife, this is about a year and a half ago, and I was like, I'd like to do a I have opinions and I want to discuss ideas and get in depth and talk about things from my perspective, but I don't want to be having to like run on this political hamster wheel on every single podcast where I'm just reading the news and commenting, and it just gets negative after a while. And I get angry and agitated. And so we were kind of kicking around what kind of podcast could I do? And I said, well, we thought maybe it'd be good to have one about experts where I can learn from somebody and have an honest, more civil discussion. And then we can just sprinkle in the politics. Like there's always a room, like a political issue will always pop up, and you can just talk about that. There's nothing stopping, me from doing that. And so that's why for the podcast, I decided to make it more about experts and me learning from somebody, and then just sprinkle in the politics where it happens to come up, than the other way around, than having a political podcast where, I'm just making myself angry and the listeners angry. And then
it's not agenda based.
Yeah, it's not an agenda-based podcast. It's a truth-seeking podcast, and we talk to a person who understands what they're talking about too. That's another thing I don't like when I go onto these news shows and they have, say it's an issue about, I don't know, climate change, and they have a political pundit talking about climate change and not an actual scientist.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk to the scientists. So let's just do that. Why am I talking to some CNN contributor about climate change? So that's what I wanted to do, is talk to actual experts.
How long you been doing the show?
About a year and a half.
Yeah.
But I did take a couple of months off because I got married, and so I went on honeymoon. So I did, the summer was kind of a low period, and now we're kicking it back up again. So it's a weekly podcast, comes out Monday morning, pretty much a new expert every time. So
do you find it's evolving at all as a show, or have you kind of found the groove and you're sticking with it?
I think it's more if I've found the groove, and I'm mostly sticking with it. Although I am on weeks where I don't have a guest, I will just talk where it's just me. So before, I would just skip the week and I would just kind of go silent, which is not a good idea.
No, it's not. Yeah.
And I've learned that the hard way. So now what I'll do is if there is a week where I don't have a guest, I'll just read through the news, comment on a few things. And even if it's like a 30 or 40-minute podcast, I'll put that out there. So in a way, it's evolving a little bit more toward my opinions, but that's not the overall intent.
But you're definitely learning from it.
Oh yeah.
You feel more educated now than
yeah. I mean, there is a selfish aspect to it. You can learn a lot from somebody just by sitting down and chatting with them for an hour and a half.
Oh,
I
agree.
Great excuse. Yeah, and it's a great excuse to meet really impressive people. Like I mean, I never thought I would sit down for 2.5 hours with an actual Holocaust survivor. I mean, the dude is 92 years old, still walks around, lives with his wife, and he just lives down in Orange County, And I mean, he was out there literally fighting Nazis. I mean, he was throwing Molotov cocktails at him. I mean, he was in it. He was there in the trains. I mean, when am I ever going to have the chance to do that again? So when you have a podcast, it's like, wow, I can invite this person on. It's not weird.
No, I agree. I think it sounds like we kind of started our own shows for the same reason.
Yeah.
I mean, mine came from a former journalist, actor, writer, and I got into COVID, and I got smacked around by COVID like a lot of people did. We all have our own story of how we got through it, but I felt really stagnant. I felt like I wasn't evolving as a human being, as a writer, just my mind was starting to go soft. And I like to read like anybody else, and I like to listen to things, but one of the ways I learn is by having conversations and interviewing, and I always did when I was a reporter. So that's kind of why I started it. So it was a selfish reason for me too. I'm also hoping Spotify will call up and be like, here's $100 million. And I'm also hoping that a radio station will call up and be like, do you want to do the morning drive time? Hint, hint. But it definitely has helped me get my creative mojo going and having these conversations. Like you said, like the Holocaust. Survivor. That's amazing. Like talking to you is, I'm enjoying this and picking your brain. And it's kind of neat too, because you're a little bit different in your political leanings, but it's not like I'm talking to the other Eric Erickson, if you're familiar with the conservative commentator, who I still get his hate mail every once in a while.
Oh my God.
Yeah, people confused us, and it's always really interesting.
He has a K though, right? I see. See, there we go.
But I get emails like hate me emails from him, not from him, from people who think I'm him, and I also get fan mail. And that's also really weird when people are like, I love what you're doing. You're taking down the liberals. I'm like, what, huh? What is this?
You should email them back and say, thanks. And by the way, here's my show. And just,
I might now.
Yeah. Like take advantage of that. I mean, just be, hey, I appreciate you listening. Like here's my podcast. And then they'll listen to you. And I wonder how long it'll take them to realize that it's actually not the Eric, but it could be a fun experiment.
The other thing that happened to me too is during the BLM, during all the BLM protests, there was a guy in Ohio who went. So my nickname is the Angry Viking. I got it when I was doing stand-up comedy, because of my heritage and the name and everything, and I really like it, and it kind of sticks, and it's been my brand name. So in the middle of the BLM protest, there was this dude in Ohio who started going by the name Angry Viking, and he had it on his hat and all that stuff. Well, I've been going by it for over a decade. So I wrote a little letter that said, by the way, this is technically my unregistered trademark, and you can't do that. And then next time I saw him, he had it blacked out on his hat. But wow. I got messages from people thinking I was him. And they were like, we're praying for you. We want to give you money. How can we support you? And I wrote them back very nicely. And I said, not me. And then I changed my personal website to a BLM donation site. So everybody, because people were going to my website. So now when they went to the website, they saw a little thing that said donate to BLM. That stopped really quick. I stopped getting messages after I did that, because I'm a troublemaker. Wow. I have to do something.
Wow. But, did you so you did stand-up comedy then? That's
I did for a while. I did it for about a year and a half. I made a few movies as well. That world's really changing, especially COVID just changed that entire landscape.
Yeah.
But the reason I stopped doing it, because it wasn't a passion of mine. And if you're going to get up and take stage time from somebody who that's just what they have to do, it didn't seem right after a while. Okay. When you don't absolutely love it with 110% of your soul, and you get a little sick of the hecklers and whatever. But it was a great way to get up and kind of like formulate your feelings on stuff and your timing and everything. So I enjoyed it.
I have one buddy that did he did improv comedy in Chicago as well. This is like 20 years ago, but he's the only comedian that I've ever really known. And how do you formulate your shows? Like how do you go? I don't really know what I don't know in comedy. So how do you do a show? Do you start with the amount of time that you have and then build from there? Like, how do you do it?
It's sort of, yeah. Like when you start out, you only get like 3 minutes, 3-4 minutes. So you start, you kind of put together your jokes, and you put together what you're thinking about, and you start off really rough, and a lot of stuff doesn't work. You think it's hilarious, and you get up there and you're like, oh, that wasn't funny. Mine was really about, my culture, and about the fact that my family is descended from Vikings. And it was basically like, who's your daddy? Because if you're white and European, my people's blood is flowing through your veins pretty much. One of my most popular jokes was about like, we changed the DNA of a continent. Before we got there, everybody looked like Danny DeVito. After we were done, tall bisexual flight attendants named Brigitte.
Yeah.
So it was kind of,
it's a good trade.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that, but it's just a lot of it's trial and error, and then being true to who you are, and then kind of falling into the banter and whatever. But like I said, it wasn't a passion. It wasn't something where I'm like, I need to express myself this way. It was, I always can tell people when they ask me what I do, I'm single now. So I will admit that I'm on Bumble. And so they always ask you what's your employment? What do you do for a living? And I'm like, I'm a storyteller. And it doesn't matter if I'm acting or if I'm writing or I'm doing comedy or doing a podcast or hosting. I'm telling stories or someone else's stories. It's just a different medium.
Yeah.
So it always
Okay.
lends to it. But now that everybody knows I'm on Bumble, I'm in trouble. But there's a reason. But
I think they got sued or something, didn't they? Because
I won. I got money. I got money out of that. there was a class action lawsuit, and I got a check for like $33.
Oh my God. I hope that makes up for it. All those, is it like, because like the women have to message you first? That's the deal. And that was somehow
it was something like that, misrepresentation of likes or some kind of thing. And I was just like, all right, that buys half a tank of gas, quarter a tank of gas in California.
Yeah. I mean, I actually am a lawyer, but sometimes I don't know. Sometimes like what you see is there's like whoever won isn't always, they didn't win the way you think they might have won, or it might have been like a settlement of some kind. So I am curious what the actual legal basis for that lawsuit was.
I probably have the letter in one of my files. If I can dig it up, I'll send it your way so you can take a look at it. But
yeah, the whole dating thing. I also where was it? I think it might have been on one of these Netflix documentaries, which you got to kind of take with a grain of salt, because the producer can kind of put whatever they want out there. But I did hear that they will, like, if you're a new person signing on, they will put bots on your profile. So like if you're a new guy and you're like all excited, they'll like put these hot chicks on there that are messaging you, and all they'll do is just say hi. And the guy will start engaging with a bot. I'm like, oh, that's low.
That's definitely true. So I'm one of those people when it comes to the dating apps where, and there's a lot of us. It's funny when you start talking to people who do it, where you're like, I'm never going to do this again. And then you get on and you're on there for about 20 minutes and you're like, delete your account. And you do it all the time, but you notice when you get on there that you're like, wow, all of the first 10 women that you see are like gorgeous, amazing, exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And then I did go on Tinder a couple times, but I'm too old for Tinder, I think, because I'm not their demographic. And I'm not trying to have sex with every woman across LA. But it's exactly what you said. Like you'll match with and then they're like, oh, well, send me your information or go to this website or whatever. And after a while, you're just like, I'm going to die alone.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
you're married though. You're married, and how long have you been married?
Only about 2 months.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How's it going?
Yeah. It's going great. It's going great.
Yeah.
We got married back in August, and honeymoon in September. And so
you're still nesting. You're still in that nesting period.
Yeah. Well, we've been together for a few years. So
okay.
It's just more paperwork at this point. It's been great. So
are you thinking about, are you ever going to run for office again? Are you pretty much done with that?
So I'd say I'm mostly pretty much done with it, but I would like to. But this is what I learned: if you're going to run for office, only do it if you actually believe you can win. Not like, not like in the soft version, but you actually critically, when you look at the hard numbers, think you can win. And I live in Santa Monica right now, and I'm registered Republican. It's like 2-1. I would have to move. If I could, then if I lived in an area where I could win, I would probably try it, but I wouldn't run for anything probably less than Congress. I'm just not really interested in local level politics as much as I am national. So
yeah. But you would have to, if you had to move in order to run, then you're not running because you want to help the people that you're representing. You're moving in order to be an elected official. So that's
I'd be a carpetbagger.
Yeah. Well, there's a term I haven't heard in a while.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be a carpetbagger, but I did grow up in the Southern California area. So, Orange County is a possibility, maybe San Diego County. So yeah, anyway, run if you can win. And you can only win as a new, mostly no name person if you're within about 5 to 10 percentage points in terms of registration advantage. So if you're a Republican and you're running in a Democratic district, make sure it's not no more than D plus 10. If it's more than D plus 10, I just don't think you have a chance. I mean, people are so rigid in their ideologies. Like even me, like I feel like I'm pretty open-minded, but I don't, all things being equal, I probably would vote Republican. I mean, unless the Republican was like really just a bad person. I mean, you know, Trump was certainly, I didn't vote for him either time. I just kind of sat it out. But even then I didn't vote for a Democrat, you know? And so imagine how everybody else is. So I just don't see people overriding the party ideology very easily.
Okay, so let me ask you a charged question though, because I think we're best friends at this point. So
no problem. Just between me and you.
Just between, nobody's listening. How do you feel about Joe Biden with what's going on right now? What are your straight feelings on that? And I'll tell you mine too, so sure. I won't just leave you hanging. But
sure. I don't really feel anything about Joe Biden. Personally, I think that he is just an old guy who's probably beyond his definitely beyond his time. And I think he's just kind of doing whatever his closest advisors, his advisors are encouraging him to do. I wish he would be, in terms of policy, just a little bit more moderate. I don't like huge spending bills. You know, I wasn't happy with how the Afghanistan withdrawal went. So I guess I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, you know, 10 being like I really love Joe Biden, and 1 being I really hate Joe Biden, I'd be like a 4. You know, that's probably where I would sit. So, yeah.
There's one word, the word that comes to mind whenever I think of him is caretaker. I feel like he's a caretaker president. Like he just kind of is in there and he isn't. I was talking with Stacey Roberts about this on an episode. He's a historian and we were talking about different presidents, and I kind of put Joe Biden in that Hillary Clinton, Terry McAuliffe kind of column, a little bit Bill too, where it feels like he just said, well, I checked all the boxes. I was in Congress I was a senator for this long. I was VP. I did this. It's my turn. It's just supposed to happen. And he feels very ineffectual. I don't see him as a leader. I don't get inspired by him. Now, even though personally, I'm one step short of calling Trump the Antichrist, and I'm an atheist, so that's an interesting thing to say, but you got to give him credit, man. He charged up his base. He knew how to push the right buttons. He knew how to, get people to do what he wanted to do. Joe Biden just feels very uninspired in a time when we need somebody who's inspiring, who is somebody who gets us going. And,
Yeah, I mean, Joe Biden's in a tough spot as well. I mean, I think that the economy is going to kind of lumber along because we basically printed $6 trillion, and just kind of try to plug the holes due to COVID. And that's going to eventually, with inflation, that's eventually going to come back to bite us. So he's in a tough spot there with COVID, and you're right. I think just personality wise, he's not the type of person who's going to inspire. He is a caretaker sort of candidate.
Do you think he's going to run again?
Biden?
Yeah. Do you think he'll do it?
Yeah. If he's alive and capable, I think he will. I think that just it's in him. He's been in Congress since like the 70s, right? I think he'll keep going until he actually dies, until somebody scoops him up off the ground and says, sorry, Joe, you can't even speak anymore. I think he will.
Have you heard the Buttigieg rumor?
There's a rumor about Buttigieg.
There's a rumor that, so this came out this week. So the new political rumor is that it's going to be that Biden's not going to run. And that the party is going to have a runoff between Harris and Buttigieg. Buttigieg? I never learned how to pronounce
Buttigieg. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, maybe Biden will step aside. I mean, yeah, you're right. Again, maybe the party is like, hey, look, Joe, you just can't do it. How about you?
Yeah,
step aside. And because he did make presidency, I think ultimately he just wanted to be the president. He got it. Does he have to do another term to feel good about himself? Maybe not. He's got a good excuse. He could just say, look, I'm out of gas. I'm 80 centuries year old now, and I can't do anymore. Yeah, I mean, it could be those two. I think I want to talk about a little bit about like Trump real quick. I think what's interesting about him is that he united sort of the blue collar part of American society that hadn't really had, I guess, a voice in major politics in a while. I think that's what united him. And I think what Democrats need to realize is that, people voted for Trump not because they hated a certain race or a certain class. They voted for him because they hated liberals. I mean, they hated, the hate was toward the sort of the high elitist, I guess, if you want to say that, progressive. That's where the hate is. It's not toward like, Black people or women. I could say maybe a little bit toward immigrants, maybe. But that's what I think what Trump did is he united sort of the blue collar part of society. And he was a bull in a china closet, didn't care, who he hurt in the process. I had a friend have a really good analogy. Trump was a great puncher. He was a great fighter, but he fought with his eyes closed. He just swung at everything. And once in a while he'd land a good punch on the person that you wanted him to hit. Other times he would hit the baby, and that's why people eventually just got sick of him, because he just couldn't conduct himself.
Collateral damage. There's just
create a lot of collateral damage. Yeah. And people might have liked his policies. I mean, I liked his policies, but I didn't like his personality. And I think when people kicked him out of office, they kicked him out because of his personality. And I think what Biden didn't realize is that they didn't vote for Biden because they liked Biden's policies. They voted for Biden because he just wasn't Trump.
Yep.
So
yeah. But I think one thing you said I do want to comment on is, sure, I don't think it's that they hate. Well, maybe they do, but they shouldn't. It's if technically I'm a liberal. Technically, if somebody has to put something on me, I'm not crazy about the term, but I guess I am. And I hope that somebody doesn't hate me because of my beliefs. Now, there are a number of far left liberals, and we kind of like what we talked about where it becomes this craziness about, can we have the toy store thing, or names and binary gender issues and all of that kind of stuff, that pendulum is swung so far to the left for a certain number of people. If you're upset at those people, that's one thing. Just like if I get upset at extreme far right people that don't voice the majority of the political spectrum, that's an exception. Or if you're mad at the politicians who are the ones that are putting certain policies into place that you don't agree with, that's something. But when we start hating the actual people, when you look at some of these polls that are coming out, where it's not, do you disagree with the Democrats, or do you disagree with the Republicans and their policies? It's, do you believe that they are destroying the country? And you get numbers in the 40-50% believe that it's destroying the country. Well, it's not the people. And then it comes back to what we keep saying, is you have to have these conversations. You and I have had a very constructive discussion. We didn't break out screaming at each other. And I'm not driving over from West LA to Santa Monica to burn your house down, or vice versa.
Yeah.
But it's about having those discussions and realizing we're all people just trying to take care of our families, and we do have differing ideas. But when we lump everybody together and just say, oh, well, liberals are destroying the country, conservatives are destroying the country, that doesn't help anybody. That doesn't do anything to further us and keep us going and as a nation or as a society, or evolve. Yeah. So I think that's dangerous. Not what you said is dangerous, but I think there's a mode of thought where just, throw the baby out with the bathwater kind of situation.
Well, yeah, and that's true, and that's why when I do talk to people who are on that side and they start using the rhetoric that you talked about, I'm like, no, it's not true. There's a big spectrum, of people on that side, and to lump them all in at once, is just as destructive as what you're complaining about that's being done to you. So, take the temperature down, give people a chance. When something bad happens, I again chalk it up more toward mistake and ignorance than malice. There's certain principles that I think are a good starting point. Pursue truth more than defending your tribe. There's certain modes of thought that we can get into that would certainly help. And it's not to say they won't have disagreements. And that's fine. I mean, there's 330 million people in the country. I can't get 3 of my friends to agree on where to go out to dinner. We're going to have disagreements.
Yeah. Especially Santa Monica. There's so many places to go.
Yeah. We have so many choices,
The Republic of Santa Monica.
Yeah. Well, it's another interesting thing happened. I went fishing with some friends about a year ago, and I had one of the guys in the group who was not one of my close friends, but a friend of a friend. He was involved in politics, and he was from Texas, and he was a Democrat. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting, because at first I heard he was a Democrat. I'm like, well, I'm a Republican. Obviously, we're going to have certain disagreements. And then he said something very interesting. He was like complaining about all the socialists and the progressive. Like, he sounded like a Republican, but yet he was a Democrat, and he identified as liberal. And I'm like, we need more of that. We need to show people like we're not all, it's not just two sides. It's a huge spectrum, and even it's not a two-sided spectrum. It can be an up-down if you add in, libertarianism and certain other philosophies. So you just got to let a person speak.
Yeah.
And you'll find a lot more agreement than you would think.
Yeah. And it's tough in this country too, because we're one of the few countries in the world that basically only has 2 parties. Most countries have 3, 4, 5 more, and although it does cause problems when they have to come to a consensus because you have so many splintered groups, but it's tough here when they tell you got to be one or the other. Oh, well, I'm going to vote for a third party. Well, your vote's going to be wasted, and you're
not going to win. We do have 2 parties, but I think again, I don't know the answer to this. I'm not going to say that my opinion is any more valuable than anybody else's here, but I think we have 2 parties because all the other minor ones have basically just been subsumed into those. Like, you probably would have 5 or 6 or 7 different parties like in Canada. I think they have like 4 major ones and then another 4 or 5 minor ones, but they still have to come to a form a coalition at the end. And so things eventually devolve into 2 sides anyway. So, we definitely need a lot of improvements in how we conduct electoral politics in the United States. But I wouldn't chalk every malady up to the fact that we just have 2 parties. I just think that that's sort of like what happens in a war. Eventually you're going to try to get people on your side, and then eventually you're going to have us all fighting under one banner, and it just happens to be R&D. But like I said,
that's a whole other danger. Yeah, then you get in nationalism, and there's some other issues there that
really there's regional issues as well. A Republican in California is going to be a lot different from a Republican in Alabama, and a lot different from a Republican up in Vermont or New Hampshire. So you have a region like West Virginia is a great example. I mean, look at the Democrats in West Virginia. They're basically like Republicans because if at least when it comes to climate change.
Yeah. So that's why we have to keep having these types of conversations. And actually, I think I can be a little negative about a few things. I'm becoming more positive about seeing the centrist, and that used to be a different kind of a dirty word, but I think there is a central place where people are starting to gravitate to that is a bit more grounded in reality. It's grounded in conversation. It's grounded in, understanding that people have different backgrounds, and we can kind of agree to disagree about certain things and figure out a way to give and take. And, I'm hopeful that some of that'll come together more and more. You want to pump your show again, and we'll wrap this up. What you got?
Yeah, sure. Again, it's the Greg Krino Show. It's on all of the podcast apps. You can also go to gregkrino.com and you can subscribe. You can get all the links there. And my last name is spelled Krino. And again, it's a show about experts. You're going to learn something every time, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. So
cool. Are you on the social medias? You do. They
Yes,
are.
I am. You can find the Greg Krino Show on Facebook, Instagram. I'm on Twitter too, but I don't even use it. So if you
Such
tweet
a
me,
dangerous place.
I'll get the email, but yeah, so you can follow it, like it, share it, subscribe, all the good stuff.
Yeah,
So.
it'll be in the show notes too. So make sure
Okay.
you can click through on there, and we'll make sure it's all there.
Cool.
Greg, it's been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed
Yeah.
this. Thanks for pulling all this together at the last minute. And no fisticuffs were thrown. No. It was actually pretty dang civil.
I know. I always like the civil, friendly conversations, and but as we get to know each other more, we can have more of these really hard conversations in the future. So maybe we can come back on, or you can come on my show and we can kick some things around. So it's
definitely we can go have seafood in Santa Monica. There's something we go to.
Yeah.
I guess Gladstone's isn't there anymore, but we can go.
yeah. There's a ton of places. But yeah, come on down, shoot me a text or an email, and we'll make it happen.
All right, Greg. Thanks so much. Appreciate it, man.
All right, Eric. Thanks. Take care.
What's up, everybody? It's Mick Manhattan, creator of thescenesnobs.com and one of the hosts of the Scene Snobs podcast. We are a show that specializes in the absurd. We talk about the craziest of topics that revolve around the things that we love, like movies, television, pop culture, geek-oriented. It's so much fun. Whenever you join us, our first goal is to entertain. So always stop by, join in the conversation in the comments as we do our live show, or listen to us anytime after. But you are always going to have a great time. The Madman, my co-host, joins in. Perfect voiceovers. Everything else in between. We have guests, celebrity interviews, the whole 9 yards. You will always have a good time at the Scene Snobs, so head over to thescenesnobs.com and start listening now. Take care.
For the highways of America, which for so many years were an assortment of as many designs and pavements as there were states, are now becoming one big road that can take you anywhere faster, safer, and more directly than ever before. What is this big road? Where is it going? How much has been built? How much is yet to come? These are questions we ask. Certainly traveling the entire system would be a memorable experience, but few of us have the time for such a trip.
All rights reserved. Viking Dog 2021.